was not nice. Not a great way to start this program, but these things do happen in motorsport. And we're happy to say that he's still in one piece there on the screen. So good evening to you, Willie. Great to see you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Willie.
God,
Well,
that was one of the worst ones.
absolutely. I don't remember you having a much bigger praying than that. Maybe with a manufacturer chef many years ago.
I had a few, but nothing as bad as that one.
Willie, we still seem to have a bit of feedback there. Have you got your computer switched off in the background?
Now the computer's on and the phone is on.
Yeah, if you could cut the computer so we don't get the feedback because you're a bit close to each other, or just move the one away from the other.
Is that better?
That's better. Yeah. Now we've got a better sound. But I need you to look at the telephone screen.
Okay.
There we go. That's where we've got the best picture of you, unfortunately. The computer, for some reason, is nope. Now we've got you completely side. You're turning upside down again now.
Why are you upside down?
Because this thing has gone wrong.
We've got a terrible feedback there, Willie. If you can just cut that computer completely. Hi, Sue.
Hi.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it would be fair to say that it's much easier for you to build a V8 than it is to get this computer going. Can you hear us, Willie?
I could, yeah, you just have to talk a little bit louder.
Very well. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes.
Okay. I just said now, I made the wild statement of saying that I think in our case, it's a lot easier to build that engine than it is to get the computer going.
Yeah, computers are a pain in the butt.
But welcome once again. And well, tonight
Good evening.
we want to twist your arm, and we want you to take us through a whole series of motor cars. And there must be a few pages of cars that you can add to this list. Behind me, there's a little Morris, and I believe that was the beginning of all this.
That was the start, yes. That was my little road car, which I went on holiday with, and then I decided I'll just try my hand at Killarney. And I went there with a Morris. I'd never gone around Killarney, and I didn't make it round the first lap. I bent all the wheels. So I had to come home and fix it up. And the following week, I arrived too late for qualifying, so I started 36th on the grid last. And I won the race. And that was my first ever experience of Killarney.
And you were hooked for life since.
It seems so, yes. Still doing it.
I saw a few photographs of that Morris taking a bit of a oops coming through Clubhouse. What happened there?
On the second heat, I was a little bit too enthusiastic into Clubhouse, and when it went off the track, it dug into the sand and fell upside down.
But fortunately, in those days, they built very strong cars, so you just rolled it back on its wheels and continued?
Yeah, no, it was, no, the roof had caved in a little bit, so I had to repair it, and then after that, I did a few hill climbs, Krugersdorp hill climbs with it, and a bit of drag racing, a little bit of Wembley Stadium, and then I moved on to the rest of the racing.
Well, there's something that never ceases to amaze me. Is you came to visit us in Cape Town with Gunther Drotsky's Cape Motorsport Festival recently, and yeah, you see everybody arriving there with trailers and mechanics and all kinds of fancy equipment, and then you go into this massive new Dennis Joubert pit complex, and right in the corner, there's two people in a car. The massive Sabat Opel, and Willie Hepburn running around it as though he's the mechanic. Sue looking very worried in the corner. And then suddenly you jump in this car and you simply go out and drill everybody.
Yes,
You've always done it solo. Why?
it's a case of I don't know. I just get in and do it myself, And as it turned out, Malcolm Aiton Burkhardt just moved in and started helping me, which was a great help, and he was really a pleasure because it was quite a difficult thing getting it all sorted out. But yeah, I've always done that. Even previously at the Pipers and things like that, I've always gone there. But my brother used to help me quite a lot. But unfortunately, his health is not good, so he couldn't come with.
Now, going back to Killarney again, it wasn't all easy, as you just said. It was quite a difficult weekend. You ended up having the engine and gearbox out of the car on the Thursday still. What happened? Why was there drama?
Which one was that, Patrick?
No, the most recent event at Killarney. I believe you had the engine and gearbox out the night before.
No,
Looking for
not
a
the engine
vibration
and
or
gearbox.
something.
Just I went out for my first practice and I heard a funny noise and I thought it was a gearbox with a broken tooth. So we whipped the gearbox out and checked it, and it was not the gearbox. And then when I took the wheels off to put the good wheels on, because those were just running in wheels, then I noticed the right back disc had come loose. So I didn't have a spare hub. I had to fly one down from Joburg, which I put in on the Thursday morning, and we got it going, and that's when I went out and qualified on pole.
Wow. And then I have to ask the question. You and Rudolf de Vos put up quite a show in the first heat, but on the second heat, suddenly there was no Willie Hepburn, and then you came tearing out at the back of the field.
Yes, there was a reason for that, but basically it also helped to make a bit of a show for the crowd. And also I enjoy passing cars. And it's more for my enjoyment. I know that the slower cars don't like it, but I love it.
Well, we heard more than one driver stating that it felt like an earthquake every time you went past them. But that is the beautiful side of the era of the Opel. It's the sound, the thunder. It's supposed to be an intimidating car out on the track, and it certainly is just that.
Yes, I was a little bit worried about the loud exhaust when I went down, because I thought maybe they'll complain about the noise. But, half the fun is hearing that roaring sound of the engine. But
Absolutely.
I just ran out of time to fit extra silencers.
Well, we're glad you ran out of time. Please never put them on.
Okay.
That car must sound the way it did. But
Yes.
behind me now, there's a little Chevy.
But
I always say I
before
can't.
Patrick,
Cliff,
before we go off,
I want
No,
to make this
Patrick,
one
before-
statement.
no, but before we go off, we first need to
There we
talk
go.
about the specs of the Opel Rekord. What is in that car? What engine, what gearbox is in that car, Mr. Eben?
He's not going to tell you.
Sorry, I didn't get that. The Opel, it's a Chevy
Yes.
V8 engine, but
Okay.
I've upgraded it quite a bit over the years, and it's now fairly strong.
Okay.
There's a very interesting name on the tappet cover there. It says Hendrik Motorsport. That makes it very USA.
Yes, originally when I went over to the States and I went to visit Hendrik, and I got an engine from him, one of the NASCAR engines, and that was quite some time ago. But those are special magnesium tappet covers, and I've hung on to them all through the years.
I seem to remember those appearing in the Animal as well.
No, the Animal
something to
had
that
Roush
effect.
covers.
Roush,
Jack
that's
Roush.
yeah, sorry, I do apologize. I got that too mixed up. But before we get to the Animal, the little chef, I can never understand why people would like to go drag racing. They spend a small fortune to spend as little time as possible in their car, because the object of drag racing is always to go quicker and quicker. So you at the end, but yeah, I'm only joking when I'm saying that, because if you go down to a 8-second or 7-second motor car, it's a mean piece of kit, and it takes some serious concentration going down that strip. But Willie, you were doing amazing things on the drag strip when most people were still considering what drag racing is all about.
Yes, I did a couple of years of drag racing. That Chevy 2 was my road car, and it was a left-hand drive, two-door, and I had a 327 Chevy motor in it, and as a road car, it was quite quick. I mean, I came back from Durban one night in a hurry in 3.25 hours to Joburg.
Sure.
And that was from the middle of Durban to Bez Valley, where I was staying. And then after that, I decided to run it at the drags, eventually putting on slicks and putting tramp bars on and things like that.
The love for drag racing, or your decision in which direction you would eventually go with motorsport. You started off doing hill climbs. You started off at Killarney, then you went hill climbing, then you went drag racing. You seem to have an interest in all aspects of motorsport. If it moves, you want to race it.
Well, anything to do with motor cars, I've been involved through the years. And whenever I went to America, and I did a couple of times, I went to the drags, I went to NASCAR. In fact, in those days, I actually bought back some NASCAR engines which I put in the Chevs. And I built 5 of those Chev records. And they all had NASCAR motors in, genuine, out of the NASCAR cars.
Yeah.
That's still my favorite one of them all, but that's the manufacturer challenge car.
The manufacturer's challenge car was one that General Motors signed me up, myself and Jeff Mortimer, and they gave me the Opel record to prepare. And we only had to build it with a 5-liter engine, no bigger. And 5-liter was what the little Chevy Can-Am came with. They called it a Z28 5-liter 302. And I modified it and put on big carbs and that, and it went very well. And the very first race I ran it at Killarney, I won. And that was at the Grand Prix in 1979.
I had the privilege to be present there, seeing you race that car on the day. But it came to a bit of a bitter ending, if I remember correctly.
Yes, unfortunately. Unfortunately, the what's the name? The right front wheel went flat going down Barbecue towards the kink, and as I turned it into the kink, it wouldn't turn because the wheel was completely flat, and it just went straight into the wall, and that was the end of that car. But it was the end of the season and the end of the championship and the end of that series, because the BMW that Ken Howes had prepared for Scheckter was declared illegal, and they took away all his points. And then, of course, it reduced the number of cars in there, and so it fell in a heap.
That photograph behind me now, I took this photograph with the final meeting at the Royeska circuit. It brings me to another topic. You have possibly driven on more circuits in South Africa than most, even those that we've never heard of before. So which would you consider your favorite track over all these years?
I think my favorite circuit ever was the original Killarney. And I've driven on, as you say, quite a few, including Bloemfontein. Bloemfontein used to have a nice circuit as well. It was quite a tight circuit, but yeah, Bloemfontein, Welkom, all over the place, Natal, even Desi's Raceway I've driven on.
Is there a specific reason why you would say Killarney?
The original Killarney had a nice long straight, and it had some very, like Barbecue in the Animal, you could actually get the tail out through Barbecue at 140 miles an hour. And so it was quite exciting.
You guys had some tremendous tussles there, Tony Viana in the BMW, you and Jeff and everybody. Um, that brings us to another topic, which is a very unfair question to ask because I think it changes throughout the eras. But who would you consider your toughest opponent over these years?
Tony was a very tough opponent, and but you know, in all the different forms of racing, we had Dave Charlton in Group N and Group One, and him and I had some serious battles at the front of the field in the Mazdas. And Tony ran Group One, and then in the Fiats he ran, and we had endless battles all over the country. Some circuits he was quicker, and some circuits I was a bit quicker.
You mentioned the Mazdas now, rotaries. Bar the V8s, that must be your favorite engine because that's the only other element I've really seen you getting really stuck into, and that's the rotary motors.
I loved those rotary engines. I learned the hard way that little red car you see now was a repossession from Stanek, which I paid next to nothing for, and I raced it and rebuilt the engine myself, and then learned how to do rotary engines. And then we eventually did it in Group One, which we then allowed to use semi slicks, and they went very well. It treated me well.
You were pretty spectacular especially I remember the silver Alice Motors car, Castrol car. I remember you coming through turn 3 at Killarney, totally sideways in a gaggle of motor cars. You guys were very rarely more than the thickness of paint away from each other. It was seriously tight racing.
The Mazda, the silver one, was the later version. That one behind the yellow one, that was the original red one, which I converted into a modified. That one there, yeah, the orange one. That used to be that original red Group 1 car. I made it into a modified and then got the new Capella, which had 4 headlights instead of the 2 square headlights. And I raced that for a couple of years. And then I changed over to the later model Capella, as they call it, with a long nose. And those were very good years because those cars were fantastic to drive.
Going a little bit further now, we're jumping around between the motor cars now, but it's difficult to follow a real date sequence here. But with the Mazdas, you eventually ended up doing the RX-7s in Group 1 and in modified specification. But it wasn't limited to just the sprint races. You guys also did the endurance races all over the show. And in one particular event at Killarney, you had the Alloys Motors colored RX-7 with Ben Morgenrood and his. And the two of you really put up a brilliant show. I think Robbie Smith was your co-driver at that time. It was awesome just watching you slide this car around Killarney because it hardly ever went through a corner in a straight line.
The RX-7 was a fantastic handling car, and the last Springbok series, as they called it, was all endurance races, and we participated in the 9 hour and the 3 hours here, there, and everywhere. And Robbie Smith and I actually won the overall championship,
Yes.
what they call the endurance championship that year, with that RX-7.
Now, it seems to be a complete contrast with the V8s. Was it that much, well, was it less, obviously a little bit less powerful than the V8, but you just mentioned now it was brilliant as far as handling is concerned. If you make a comparison between the Mazda and the V8s then, would the one be a lot easier to drive?
The RX-7 was a fantastic handling car. It really handled exceptionally well, to the point that the low horsepower didn't mean a thing. You could do lap times that the manufacturer's challenge car did at Killarney with a little 12A motor, which was a 1100cc engine. And one day at Killarney, and we've got it in black and white, I did within 0.3 of a second of my manufacturer's challenge car. So that little car handled like you cannot believe. And I think that's why I liked it, is because it handled and stopped so well.
But I cannot imagine the grin being any bigger than when you're behind the wheel of a V8. When Willie Hepburn pulls that steering wheel closer like this, then you know he's getting serious. Um, it's incredible to think that each of you looked very distinctly different when you're on the track and when you get serious behind the wheel. There's the 1,000-yard stare. There's the Willie grip. If you talk to people, they'll all recognize you from the way that you go about your business on the track. And that's something that seems to have disappeared in the modern era. It's gone cold. People don't associate with a specific driver anymore. Would you agree that it's become a bit corporate, if I can call it that?
I think the whole thing with my racing career was the fact that I wasn't looking to impress anybody except myself. I wanted to enjoy the car, and I drove it so that I scared myself most of the time. And that was the big pleasure of racing the cars that I raced. It was not to impress the crowds, not to win the race, but to actually enjoy the car. And obviously I kept changing little things on the car, and they handled better and better, or worse and worse. The Sierra Animal was one of the worst handling cars because it had independent back suspension, which I didn't know a lot about, but I learned over the two or so years that I ran it, and I improved it all the time. And that's why Tony and I had such a lot of battles with it. And but even with its bad handling and the straight line speed was not bad, because I got most of the engine parts from Jack Roush. And although we weren't allowed to put like these fancy aluminium heads that we use on all the modern cars, we had to use cast iron original type heads and modify. The car went very well in a straight line, and I got it round the corners.
Willie, when the animal appeared on the scene, it seemed to be a little bit unreliable. You were having a lot of problems, I think, running bearings at the time. But once you got it sorted out, it became a legend in South Africa. People still long to see the animal in action to this day.
Yeah, there was a bit of a story behind that, in that when I bought the crank and the rods and the block and all that from Jack Roush, and I put it together here, I was used to Chevy engines, and Chevy engines you could run fairly big main bearing clearances, and it kept running bearings, and I couldn't understand why. I even put rain tires on and put trade plates on the car and ran it in on the street, and it didn't help. So I phoned Jack Roush and I said, "This is what's happening all the time." And he said to me, "That is a cross-drilled crank, and you must run much tighter clearances on it." So I closed down the clearances, and from then on, I never ran a bearing again. That car, up until the day I sold it, it never gave another bearing trouble.
I did give you one unique problem. The wiper stopped.
The picture behind me.
That was quite funny in that the car was going quite well, and I was on the front row of the race. And when we got to the Goodyear Bridge at Killarney, as we went under the bridge, the wipers stopped dead center. I can't remember why or what, but they stopped. So I soldiered on, and I couldn't see where I was going. But then I just popped my head out the window and carried on and finished the race. I don't even remember where I finished, but I was determined not to stop.
A few questions arise looking at that photograph, and that is, why were you allowed to continue like that? Because I somehow doubt that you were still in the safety belts at that moment.
I told the organisers, and I crossed my fingers when I did it, that I kept the on. They were off.
Well, it didn't really slow you down, and it made you a hero around Killarney, because everybody admired the fact that you were willing to soldier on like that. And yeah, it would have been so frustrating to see that car going to the pits and retire because of something like a wiper not working.
Yes. Well, one does what one has to, but as I say, I was enjoying the race, even although it was under difficult circumstances. I still, and as I say, I like to scare the daylights out of myself when I'm doing something that's different.
Well, Willie, um, now solve another mystery for us, please. How many animals were actually built?
There were two. The Ford Motor Company built two Group 1 cars, which Serge Damsu and John Gibb raced. And when they were finished with them and they stopped doing Group 1 racing, they gave both cars to me, which I then, as I say, got Jack Roush engines for both of them. And I prepared them both the same. Obviously, the original animal I built first, and I raced that for a while. And then the second one, because I had double of everything, I put it into the spare car, and that was the John Gibb car. And eventually I had George Fisher driving it in, what was it, the Stockings? Our Stockings colours.
Yeah.
And yeah, he enjoyed the racing that car as well.
And then eventually the genuine animal went to Jürgen Zubentheim.
That's correct. He was in Southwest Africa at the time.
And then eventually he brought that to Cape Town, but it became, they sort of extensively modified that to keep up with the latest of the V8 racing. And essentially it was destroyed. But I do believe that there's a rumor that you might have what was left of it.
Yes, I've got the body shell here, and I'm busy putting bits and pieces. I've just had the roll cage redone, and I've got some of the parts for the engine and the gearbox is already built and things like that. So I'm just fitting it in amongst the other jobs that I'm doing.
And which gearbox is in those cars?
I beg pardon?
Which gearbox did you run?
It's a Ford gearbox, but it was one that was brought in by Bernie Mariner with close ratios, which there was only two of them, and I think they were made specially in America with those ratios at a very high first gear. It would do 160 plus k's an hour in first gear.
And you still have the original? You have the original gearboxes now, still in the current car?
Pardon?
Do you have the original gearbox now in the current car?
Yes. Yeah, it's a cast iron case. It looks like a standard Ford gearbox on the outside, but it's just that it's got special ratios, which were made especially in the States.
Willie, with all respect said, you're not a youngster anymore. But you have all these projects going on in the background, rebuilding these great cars. We've just touched on the animal now. But there's another monstrous motor car that's being resurrected in your garage, and that's the Chevy SS.
That's correct. I've got the Chev SS here, and I've got most of the parts already set aside for it. The engine's already built, the gearbox is already built, and the diff, all that sort of thing I've done already. I've got all the body work done, and it's just a matter of painting it now and assembling it. But I've got so many projects, and customer projects that I've got to fit them all in because I work alone.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the problem. We would love to see you drive all these cars sometime in the near future. So someone must get you 48-hour days so you can finish all these projects.
Well, we just try our best, Patrick, and work as hard as I can, and whenever I can. I mean, I work holidays, I work Sundays. Whenever I get a chance, I just get in and work. Even if I just do something in the evening or something on a Sunday, I just make sure I get something done,
Well, I'm going to make a statement now, and that is that I don't believe you've ever worked a day of your life because you love what you're doing, so you don't consider it work. That's why you're willing to spend the amount of hours that you are on this.
I can't stand boredom, and sitting doing nothing is boredom. So I'd rather do something.
Tell us the story behind the SS, please, because it's a very unlikely looking racing car.
You know, a friend of mine in Benoni had this black SS car, and I bought it from him. And I had a workshop up Fisher's Hill on the way to Primrose, and we started building it. My brothers and I had a friend working for me at the time, and we sprayed it all in a dark blue color. We took all the black off, and one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, we got it running. And I was testing up and down Fisher's Hill at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I had to get it to Killarney, but I had no trailer. So I put the rain tires on and put a set of trade plates on, and I drove it to Killarney. And they stopped me at the Killarney off ramp and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to the racetrack." But they didn't. In those days, the cops were lenient and they were sensible. But they saw I was covered by trade plates, so they let me go and carried on to Killarney, and I raced there and won.
Now, that sounds very simple to say you just raced there and you won, but that car was pretty dominant for its, and it sort of seemed out of era. You would have expected the SS to be on the track about 10 years before, yet you made it a very modern and very successful car.
Yes, you know, I couldn't believe how well it turned out. The very, very first race I did with it, myself and Mike O'Sullivan were going up Killarney up towards the top of the hill, and I just saw like a rain of oil coming out the bottom of his car, which meant he'd thrown a rod and sort of was messing oil, and mine did one 10 seconds later. I then took it home, rebuilt the engine nicely, and the following race was at Killarney, and the car, Eddie Kaizen said to me, "I will paint it in Tiger Wheels colors, but I'm not going to sponsor you. Every race you win, I will pay you 1,000 Rand." And in those days, 1,000 Rand was good money. So I won 9 races on the trot.
So you almost made Tiger Wheel goes bankrupt in 1 year.
Yeah, when we were doing the 9-hour with the car, and I was sitting up on the stand, the grandstand opposite the pits, and I couldn't believe how the ground actually shook when that car went past.
Sure.
It was like thunder.
Now, the SS to me is sort of in the middle between the brute V8 manufacturer's challenge cars, the Animal, the Opel Record, and on the other side you've got the RX-7 rotaries. Would it be fair to say that it was a sort of halfway in between, almost a good handling car and almost a brutish motor car?
It was a very good handling car, and I think that was part of the success of the car, because we weren't allowed to go to big cubic inches or fancy heads or anything like that. It had to have original factory heads, and which you could port, and we had to have single 4-barrel carb similar to what comes out standard on it, and that sort of thing. But it handled very well. I had 19-inch rims at the back, and they were quite wide, but they restricted me down to 13 inches, whereas the manufacturer's challenge, I had 16.5-inch wide tires. But the car just worked fairly nicely, and it was a very nice car to drive. But then again, I enjoyed all my cars, every single one. The Camaro, when I raced it, was a hell of a nice car to race. And basically, I did lap records all over the country with the cars.
Well, that's the next question I have, and that's the blue Camaro there. That's a very American motor car. Mark Donohue, Sunoco. Was there a specific theme behind that? Is that a regional car? Is it another one of your road cars that became a race car?
Yes, it was basically a road car, and it was run as on semi-slicks in that formula, and it was also a 350 Chevy motor, and it was basically a stock type car, and I just beefed it up here and there and did some modification, and it was a very successful car. I don't know why, but it just worked. And as I say, we had Roger Penske on the side, And we phoned Roger and we asked him, would he mind if we made it Penske Hepburn Racing on the side? And he actually agreed to it. He said, sure. And as you see,
Fantastic.
it's a Sanaka Camaro, which was a copy of his original Camaro racing car.
And did you have any communication with him during that period? Did he enjoy following the success of the car?
I don't remember, to be quite honest. I just know that the guy that was helping me with the Sunoco petrol and that, he did most of the negotiations with Roger.
Now, the V8 series became very popular. It seems to have shrunk a little bit. Many of these cars have left our borders. But there was never a series like that in South Africa. Yet when it came to fruition, it became extremely popular.
Yes, well, that was the one with the Camaro, was with Peter de Toy's cars, where we had to run semi-slicks on the standard width with wheels. And Peter de Toy had quite a few cars in Fords and Mustangs and what have you. And the car was quite successful in that formula.
But then I'm going to continue on the American side. You also drove that brute, and that must have gotten your
What is it?
attention.
Yes, the McLaren belonged to a friend of mine here in South Africa, and Ray Cohen, and he asked me to drive it at Swartkops one day in a formula where Gary Dunkley was king of the roost, and he used to win all the races with the B19. And
Chevron.
I took that car there and I won him 2 in a row. Then Ray moved to Canada and he took the car with him to America, and he had the original guys that built the car go through the whole car and sort it out. And then in June or in July, 4th weekend, that holiday weekend, he invited me to come over and race the car at Seattle, Washington. And I arrived there at like 2 o'clock in the morning. We went to, it's fine, Susan. We went to the racetrack, and I went round, and it was all strange. Obviously, the track I've never seen before. And then one of the other guys, or a couple of the other guys, got together and said, just follow us in qualifying and we'll show you the lines, which I did. And then in the race, I finished 5th. And in the second race, I finished 5th in the first race. Second race, I started 5th and I won the race. And then the third race, I started 1st and I won the race. And I think I won by a few meters because it had started raining. And obviously I was being careful because it wasn't my car. But I went over the finish line first.
Now, if you had the opportunity, Willie, would you have enjoyed going into these sort of American sports cars, the IMSA Challenge or something to that effect?
You know, to be quite honest, you'll notice that I've never been what you call a paid driver to come and drive other people's cars. That was an invitation race on that McLaren M8C, but I've never had a factory drive, if you know what I mean. All the cars that even belong to the factory were built by me. And I don't know if I would have enjoyed the Sorrel type races where you get invited to come overseas and race a totally strange car for a factory or something like that. Most of the cars that I've raced, I've been involved in building them and getting them to sort it out to suit my driving style. And that has been the enjoyment in my life. It's not so much the racing, but the actual enjoyment of racing a car that you can feel underneath you and drive it accordingly. And you've obviously made little changes over the years or the period that you were running it.
And obviously, with that type of relationship with a car, it literally becomes part of it. You become part of the car becomes part of you, and you can almost feel the problem arriving before it even exists.
Yes, you know, Patrick, when when I last raced the record, it was in June at the Piper, or what we call the Piper, the Speed Festival, and I did well there. And the car's been standing and in the meantime, I've been very sick with COVID and pneumonia, which nearly took my life. And I was as weak as anything. And I was very worried about going to Cape Town to race the car there because my strength, although it was coming back, I didn't know the steering's quite heavy on that car. I didn't know if I was going to be capable. And I thought, well, I'll get the car finished and go and try it at Swartkops. And as it turned out, lots of little hiccups and lots of little things happened that I put it straight on the trailer here and drove it to Cape Town with it. And the first lap I did with it was in qualifying at Cape Town. And I was quite proud to find that I could still handle it exactly like I normally do.
Well, 1 minute 18 is not to be sneezed at, and it
Yo.
was great to see you go thumbs up that everything was okay between you and that Chev again.
Yes.
1 minute 18.
Well, 1 minute 18 wasn't a very quick time, but then I didn't have new tires on when I did the 118. But I've done a 13 quite comfortably with that car before.
Those are scary. That single seater 4 times those.
Yo. That's crazy.
But yeah, that brings us to another topic. You just opened yourself open to another question, in the sense that would you go for a 1 minute 13 just for the hell of it, or would you do the 1 minute 18 if it's all that's required to win the race?
Well, the thing is, it's almost like domineering, because the other guy in the race was much slower, doing 21s, and if I'd gone and done 13s, it would have made him look very bad. So I just drove it comfortably.
Out of respect.
In fact, I wasn't even sweating after the race.
But Patrick, before you change your picture,
But I'll have another go. I'm sure we'll get a chance early next year, and I'll have another go, and I'll put in some effort.
Patrick, before you change your picture, there's a little Can-Am in the background. I believe you're busy with a Can-Am also in the garage.
Yes. Yeah, well, I've got the Can-Am nearly finished, and I'm hoping to run it at Swartkops at the Speed Festival at the end of January.
Okay. And I know that
I'll run it in one race and run the record in another race.
And Franco Donadio is also building a Can-Am, so there could be a trio of them going at it again, and what a show that'll be.
Yes, that'll be great.
Now, Willie, what are you putting in the Can-Am? Is it going to be even more of a monster than the Opel?
Another
No. I'm putting actually the old motor from the Opel that used to be in before I put this motor, the big motor in that's in now. It's just a 383. Nothing too fancy.
Nothing too fancy. It's just going to be just short of 600 horses in any case.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, how much power does those engines make? Because, you talk cubic inches, but what's the power figures on these engines?
I beg pardon?
How much power does the V8 make?
Well, I don't really dyno them like most guys do. I just set it up the way I think it is and then try it on the track, read the spark plugs. But I would estimate that the one in the Can-Am would make about 585, 590 horsepower, and the one in the record is more around 650 to 700. But that's just working from figures of the parts.
Okay.
But I've never actual dyno tested it.
Those are impressive figures. But Willie, I've never met a racing driver that will ever say he's got enough power.
Well, that's the thrill of it. The more power you can make, the more you can impress yourself.
Or scare yourself at the same token.
Yes.
Tell us more about this yellow version of the car behind me. Which one was that?
It's the same car. It was just the very early days. You'll notice the wing was much narrower, That was one of the early days in 1989 when I first built it.
90.
It was in Saybat colors, and then Saybat changed ownership. And although I still had Saybat on the car, I painted it yellow. And that was probably 1990. And that was when just before they started the West Bank Super Series.
Now, that picture brings another question to mind as well. Swartkops have been in many versions of the track. Did you drive on the original Swartkops track? And when you make a comparison now between the drive-in side of it and the current setup, which did you prefer?
Oh, I did a lot of racing on the drive-in shape Swartkops race. And in fact, I raced Sarov on America in that Audi Turbo. And it took him the whole race to get past me. But he did get past, I'll admit. But at least he could turn up the boost. I couldn't.
That corner down the bottom at the screen was a bit of an intimidating thing. It must have been an interesting corner in a powerful V8.
Yes, it was very interesting. But as I say, one doesn't remember exactly what you were doing, but I can imagine. I know the car liked to have a little bit of right foot to get the tail out in the tighter sections. But the car handled fairly well. And it, as I say, I was on pole and I led Sarl for, I would say, 3/4 of the race. But Sarl's also a very determined racer, and he plans things accordingly, that he got by eventually and he won the race. But I had a hell of a go with him, and it was super nice.
I just bumped into a picture of the two RX-7s, but there were quite a number of them eventually. You guys created quite a stir, and there must have been, 7 or 8 of them at the end of the day, with Paddy Driver and Ivor Roche and everybody joining in on the RX-7 arena.
Well, whenever there's a car that's successful, and my RX-7 was very successful, then Ben Morganroot built one, and then Paddy Driver copied it, and most of them got most of their information and their bodywork from me, because we had molds and that. And then Clary Taylor and a couple of guys in Cape Town all built RX-7s because they were so successful and easy to drive. And I can remember there was Henny van der Linde in the Nissan, and then there was Ben and Clary and Paddy Driver and two other guys in Cape Town with RX-7s. And the one race we had there was like four or five RX-7s in the one race.
Yeah, down in the Cape, we had 3 that were very popular, and that was Richard Schroeder, Louis Powell, and Gary Smith in their RX-7s. Always put on a sterling show in the regional races, and of course supplemented the national championship when you guys came to visit Killarney. The numbers in those series were actually very impressive, as they ran different classes from 1300 and 1600. I think it was ABC and D classes that ran in that series. Quite a bit of a speed differential. It's almost like doing an endurance race when you're doing those sprint races, because 3-4 laps in, you're going to start lapping the slower cars.
Well, it's enjoyable coming up against the slow guys, because you actually watch what they're doing for a while from behind, and then you go by and look what their reaction is in the rearview mirror as you've gone by. And most of the slower guys don't like that, because you come past with such a rush. But I always try not to spoil their race.
Yeah, I think it's very important in the sense that they might be doing their own thing, running for a championship in their own right, and then these brutes come flying past and really shake up the environment as they go through.
Yes. Yeah. No. The thing is, it's a nice thing to do, but I always, obviously I was way in front, so I didn't have to be over bullish, I give them watch them from behind for a corner or two, and then blast past when I know it's safe and it won't upset their corner for the next corner.
And then, Willie, we started off the program with an unfortunate sequence where you had a bit of a serious moment in this Capri. Question.
Beautiful.
First of all, it's all V8s, but are you a Ford man or are you a Chevy man?
I was gonna.
I'm a racer man. When I built the Capri, and it also worked very well. I thoroughly enjoyed that Capri. And after the crash, I rebuilt it. And Darren Gutmans down in East London has got the car now, and he also loves the car.
But how many
I built the
Capris do you
second
have
one,
now?
which I for Derek Boy, and that car he loaned to me to race at Swartkops last year.
The Capris were legendary in the Gunston colours, Bobby Althoff in the Capri Piranha. They are very popular race cars, and there seems to be quite a number of them now on the classic scene again. But you actually came to Killarney with this car and lost a wheel in turn 5, if I remember correctly. Also after putting
Yes.
on a sterling show. What is in the Capris? In other words, make a comparison between the Capri and the Opals, because it didn't look any slower than the Opal at all.
Yes, the Capri had a knock-on nut, a single nut in the center of the wheel, and it obviously came loose. But it was a car. Obviously, I worked for Basil Green, and I built most of the Capri Piranhas that we sold to the public. And I was involved in building myself and Corrie Potgieter, building the Bobby Althoff car. And that car was also very successful. And we obviously had Basil van Rooyen to contend with, who was a damn good driver. And he was also a good preparer of cars. So, yeah, that was also very enjoyable.
And do you have
Take us-
one your personal Capri also? Capri Piranha? There's a yellow one lurking there in the garage with black straps.
Yeah, that's a standard road going Piranha.
Okay.
Willie, if you can make a comparison between the Althoff Capri Piranha and those that you are building now, big performance difference?
The Basil Green one was a Group 2 car. It was built in a different fashion to the ones that we've got a little bit of carte blanche now. But if you compare the lap times way back then and the type of tires, and we were stuck with 15-inch wheels and not 16-inch like we have now, you can't really compare them. But in the day, it was successful, and that was the most important part.
You come through the entire era. So you've been there in the days when racing was dangerous and other things were safe. Now in the modern era, people are saying racing is so safe, everything else is dangerous. But I would like you to make the comparison from a driver's perspective. I honestly believe that the guys in the early era of motorsport had more, the anatomy was better than most. Because there was nothing. You couldn't talk about safety because there wasn't any safety. It was just a case of you wanted to go racing and you were willing to go racing any which way. Would it be a fair statement to say that you were a lot braver in your day than you are today?
Probably more young and stupid, but in those days we didn't even have to wear gloves, and we had open face helmets. We had no thought of safety. We just wanted to get on with the race.
And I presume, such as in Formula One, the accidents were bigger and more spectacular and more serious in those days.
Yes, I would think so, yes.
Ford and Friends is coming up again. It's been a very popular concept by Louis Powell and company. Are we going to see you return to Killarney and enjoy another day of rattling windows around here?
Oh, hell yes. Got no chance to stop me getting back there. I want to come back to Cape Town, and next year I plan on making a trip to Cape Town and having a race there. I want to go to Desi and have a race there, and maybe if I can fit it in, I'd like to do a Mozambique race because I believe they've got the track up and going there, and it's quite successful. Oliver Broom was there recently, and he says it was very nice.
Yeah, it's such a pity to see Oliver come
Before I'm
down
too
all the way.
old, you know.
Well, when is that? In
While
the
I'm
next
still
one?
young.
Well, I think you've only just gotten to 80 now, so there's another 80 to go. I don't see a reason why you should be stopping.
No, I don't see any point in stopping if you're still capable. And the car's enjoyable. And obviously, I've got the 4 race cars to still build. I've got the RX-7, the SS, the Animal, and the little Can-Am. And I've still got to pedal them around the tracks. So
Oh,
as
I only
I
see
finish each one, I'll pedal it around and race it against somebody.
one problem with that. You're becoming like Dr. Greg Mills. He's got a warehouse full of racing cars, and he can't get all of those to the same circuit at the same time. So we're going to need to see you rely on somebody or something
Help you out.
so that you can get at least 2 of the 4 cars to Killarney. We're getting cheated here. We only see you in one.
We still want to get Robbie Smith in one of my cars again.
So he's also not allowed to retire.
No, he still knows how to drive.
I made the statement to Sarel the other day after his birthday, and I said the good thing about reaching the age you guys are reaching now is you can honestly say you've forgotten that you ever made the statement that you're going to retire. But it's great to see the likes of Jeff Mortimer, yourself, Sarel, everybody still have the passion for the sport, returning time after time, not only just to entertain the spectators, but still giving the youngsters a fair go for their money. And, well, I, for one, sincerely hope that Willie Hepburn's going to be around for many a year to come still.
Well, yeah, I'll keep going as long as I feel that I'm not getting in the way of the other competitors.
But Willie, there's also one person that must form an integral part of your entire career, and that's that lady on the other side of you there, Sue. I think without her, it wouldn't have been as easy as it has been.
And she's sitting here with me, and without her, I wouldn't be talking to you tonight because I don't know how to operate these things. And she's been with me all the time, and she's always been there whenever we were doing it. And right back to the early days, she's always been at the track with me.
Willie, I just saw a car pass on the screen there that we haven't touched on yet, and that's the land speed record. That was also a road car that became a very efficient racing car.
It was a road car, and it was a car that Peter Manellis had built in the States with a twin-turbo 427 Chevy in it. And then he wanted me to drive it at the land speed record. And then I don't know if he was afraid that I would damage it or something, but he said I should purchase the car, which I did, and it ran very well. Unfortunately, the second run I did, I missed 5th gear, and it took a few seconds to get it back into 5th. And then instead of doing, because I did 185 in the first raid, and the second run I only did 165, and the average was 172. But that record still stands for a road-going car.
Where does the challenge lie in a top speed run like that? It's very different from drag racing. It's very different from track racing. It's very different from hill climbing. It's different from anything. What does it take to go for a world land speed record or a South African land speed record?
Well, at the time, it didn't seem like a big deal, except, you know, you don't realize the speed that you actually get up to. I mean, 383 kilometers an hour in those days was a hell of a speed on a standard road. That's the open road to Durban at the moment.
And I can't imagine it being very stable at that speed. So you might have a highway to drive on, but you're all over the highway at that speed, I presume.
No. It was very stable. The car was The only thing that was a bit disconcerting is that the wind speed sucked the windows open because they had no frame around the top of the windows. So we put clear tape on, and the clear tape couldn't even hold the windows closed. The suction on the outside of the window was quite unbelievable.
Sure.
I don't recall you ever doing oval track racing, but I do believe that you came close to oval track racing with Group 1. That was it was banger racing most of the time. Hardly ever did you come off track without losing at least a side rear view mirror or a ding in the door or a light gone or something to that effect. It was very spectacular, but I think also, I think panel-wise it was expensive.
Yes, well, the thing is, it's, as I say, it's a matter of enjoying the ride when you can. And at the time, you don't think about it, you just do it. And the same with Group N and Group 1 and all those cars that I raced. And I've raced so many cars, different versions, different types, standard cars, and I've enjoyed every single one of them. And I even raced the Morris. I used to go to Wembley Stadium every Friday night to watch the hot rods going round, and we would get in free if we ran in the saloon car race afterwards. And again, it was so ridiculous because the Morris was quite a good car for that type of racing, and they used to start me 3/4 of a lap in front of the cars, and I had to catch the field first. But it was very enjoyable. As I say, I enjoyed all that. It was just something to do at the time.
See, Angelo Masiglia is also on the comments element here. But, he's a man that's used to preparing 20 cars for Dr. Greg Mills at any event. So maybe we should put him in contact with you, and it won't be a problem seeing 4 of your cars down at Killarney next year.
Yeah, sure.
And a truck from Joburg.
Willie, as always.
I'll keep in contact with Greg. He's a very nice person.
Well, I think there's a couple of thousand enthusiasts down in the Cape that feel the same way about one Willie Hepburn, and Killarney will not be the same if we don't see you come down here. So we love the statement that you just made, that you will be coming down for at least one event next year. And as always, it's an absolute honor speaking to you and Sue. It was great seeing you in the Cape. Thank you for putting on a sterling show again down here. Next time, please don't just enter 2 races. Do like Rudolph does and enter at least 4 races, because we need some more of that thunder around here.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. You guys have been wonderful to me, and you really made my day in Cape Town. And I appreciate these interviews. It's just something I've never done in my life before, and it's at least we can reflect back on some of the nice times that we've had.
For sure.
Absolutely, Willie. Thank you very much. We'll keep trying these interviews so that we eventually get this little interaction to a level where we don't struggle to go live. But we'll leave that to Sue. She'll sort that out so that you have the time to finish a few more V8s.
Yes,
thank you very much. And it's, as you say, if it wasn't for Sue, we wouldn't be doing these interviews.
Thank you, Sue. We look forward to chatting again in the future. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Clint. Thank you for Byron in the background.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
And Merry Christmas to all. Merry Christmas to the audience also.
Christmas and New Year. Be careful.
Yeah, Willie, we won't mind if you send us an SS or something down here for Christmas. Very, very nice of you.
You got no chance. Mine. Mine.
There's an honest answer if you ever wanted one. But
thanks,
Willie,
guys.
we'll let you go so you can go finish another car. But until next time. Bye bye.
Okay. Terrific.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you soon.
Good evening. Bye bye.